In this video, we're going to learn how to graph linear inequalities. It's very similar in graphing equations. We start by making a table of x and y values. And you look at if you look at our inequality, it's y is less than x. And remember, there's a y-intercept. In this case, the y-intercept is 0. So this inequality will be y is less than or equal to x plus 0. There's always a denominator involved, and this denominator is 1. Now, remembering back to when we graphed equations, we would make a table of x and y values, and our three values would, the first one would always be 0. The next one would be a positive denominator. The third one would be a negative denominator. We would put those values into our equations, and we use a calculator to do that. And a negative 1 plus 0 would give me a negative 1. Now we're going to go ahead and plot those values. On the coordinate plane, we have 0 and 0, which is right there in the center. Go over 1 on the x and up 1 on the y. Go 1 to the left and then down 1. And one thing that's different from before is that when we draw our line, sometimes the line will be dotted, sometimes it will be solid. Now, if you have a greater than or less than inequality sign, the line will be dotted. If it's less than or equal to or greater than or equal to, the line will be solid. And what that tells us is, just like an open or closed set, if it's closed for a solid line, we include the points along the line. If it's opened, it will be dotted. So this will be a dotted line. Now, just like before, we have an area on the coordinate plane that we have to shade, and this is how we determine the shading. If it is greater than, we shade up. So that would be above the line. If it's less than, it points downward. And we shade below the line. So in this case, above would be pointing up, below would be pointing down, and it says we have less than, so we will shade the region below. And I think a good way to do this is just to draw yourself some light lines, and you don't have to color it in very dark, it's just give yourself enough indication to show me that on your paper that you know where the shading belongs. Okay, we're going to jump over and do problem 2. Let's again go through the steps. We are graphing y is less than or equal to a negative 5 over 2x minus 1. Again, we want to start by making a table. We can see our first value needs to be 0, and our denominator is 2, so I'll use 0 for my x. My first x, second x will be 2, my third x will be a negative 2. I'll go ahead and use a calculator to figure these values out. So 2, a negative 5 divided by 2, I'll put 0 in for x, subtract 1, I get a negative 1. Now I will go back and edit my equation and change the 0 to a 2. And I get a negative 6. Now we'll change it one more time. I will change that 2 to a negative 2, and I get 4. Now I'll go ahead and plot my lines, or plot my points. Now remember, when we draw our line, that if it's less than or greater than, it's an open, so that means it's going to be dotted. If it's less than or equal to, greater than or equal to, it will be a solid line, meaning that the points are closed along the boundary. I'll graph 0, -1, 2, and down 6, and then a -2 and up 4. Now, because I'm dealing with less than, it's a solid line, meaning it's a closed along the boundary line or the boundary points. And it is less than for the shading. So let's go over that rule. Greater than, we shade above, we shade up. So that would be above. If it's less than, we shade below. So the arrow points down for below. This is definitely less than. That means I'll be shading below. And again, I would just make some very light lines on your paper that are vertical. And then there's our shading. Okay, that's it for this video. It's very simple. A lot of the steps you already know, and that's how we graph linear inequalities. And thank you for watching.